Morning, everyone. So today we're going to be moving on from Chapter 5. We're going to be going to Chapter 3 in our textbooks. So Chapter 3 is on page 178. So if you want to turn there and listen to your notes at the same time, please do so. But make sure you have your math notebook out. That means the notebook that you use to write your notes in. So in your table of contents, make sure you are writing, make sure you have all this written down. The very last line, this one right here, that will be what we're going to be learning today. Chapter 3, Lesson 1, Adding and Subtracting Decimals. So go ahead and make sure your table of contents looks just like mine. And then let's turn to that page. Your page, okay, when you're setting up your notes, it should look exactly like this. Okay, so you should have the header at the top, and you should have your questions column and your notes column. And I just use this red line in my notebook to divide up my notes like that. So again, we're taking focus note style. And then I have my notes right here, so you copy down everything that I have. All right, so first, we're going to add decimals. So to add decimals, we just need to make sure that we're lining up our decimals correctly. So in this column, I wrote how to add decimals. Okay, so if I'm adding something like 23.8 plus 11.5, okay, all I have to do is rearrange it so it looks a little different and I'm lining up my decimals. I can definitely add like this, but it might be easier to rearrange it so it looks like this. Okay, so I put my decimal right here. So for my other number, the decimal also needs to go right here. So I'm going to fill this in, 11.5. Okay, so I lined up my decimals correctly, and I also lined up these numbers. Now I'm just going to add straight down. So 8 plus 5. Okay, so 8 plus 5 is 13, so I put the 3 here, and then I added the 1 on top. So 3 plus 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Okay, and I'm going to make sure I drop down this decimal right here. It's in the same place. Okay, and then 2 plus 1 is 3. So my answer is 35.3. Okay. Let's try one more, but using a little bit of a box method. So let's do 29.6 plus 14.7. Okay. So if this wasn't easy enough for you, or you were kind of having a hard time placing your decimals, we're going to make this a little bit easier. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just placing some boxes and placing where my decimals should go so that I make sure I put one number in each box and that my decimals are lined up. So 29.6, I'm going to put the 2 in the first box, and then the 9, and then my 6 will go after the decimal. Here I'm going to put my 1, my 4, and then the 7 will go after the decimal. Okay? And then I'm just going to add, just like I did in the previous one. I'm going to add my boxes. My decimal will go straight down. Okay, and so I'm going to add going down, and I'm going to start on this side. So 6 plus 7 is going to be 13. So I'm going to put the 3 here, and I'm going to add the 1 on top. 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 4 is 14. So I drop down the 4 here, and then the 1 goes on top. And then 1 plus 2 plus 1 is 4. Okay? So then my answer is 44.3. Okay? Now, go ahead and try the got it problems in your math book. So on page 178, you've got some got it problems on the back, or on the bottom. So here are the answers, okay, if you want to take a look. Try to do them yourself and see if you get the same answers that I did. I put the answers in the left-hand column. Okay, now something a little harder. We're going to try subtracting with decimals now. So how to subtract decimals. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing but using subtraction. Okay, so let's try something like 5.7 minus 3. Let's do 8. Okay, so 5.7 minus 3.8. I'm going to line it up to make sure that my decimal is lined up correctly. So I'm going to put my decimals right here. Okay. Then I'm going to put my 7 on this side and the 5 on this side. Looks the same, right? Okay. Now I'm going to do the 3.8. So the 3 goes in front and the 8 goes behind the decimal. Okay. Now I'm going to subtract. So this was similar to the skills test. So I'm going to subtract 7 minus 8, okay? But I can't take 7 away from, I can't subtract this, okay? Because the bottom number is bigger than the top number, so I'm going to have to end up borrowing. So to borrow, I'm going to cross this off first, okay? I'm going to borrow from the 5, so I'm going to cross that out, and I'm going to put a 4 at the top, okay? This tells me that I borrowed 1, and since I borrowed 1, I'm going to give 1 over here. So that would make this 17. Because when I'm borrowing 1 and I put it over here, that actually makes it 10. Okay, so I'm going to do 10 plus 7 and I get 17. So 17 minus 8 is 9. And 4 minus 3 is 1. And am I going to leave my answer like this? Hopefully you're shaking your head and saying no, because I need my decimal. So I'm going to drop down that decimal. I'm going to put it right here. Okay? Do not forget the decimal, because if you forget the decimal, this number now becomes 19 instead of 1.9. Okay, so we are going to subtract decimals now with some more numbers behind the decimal. So let's try 5.774 minus 2.371. Okay? I'm going to line this up correctly. I want to put my decimal right here. Okay, so if you want, that's the first thing you can do. Place your decimals. I'm going to make sure I put all the numbers behind my decimal, so 774 and then 371. Don't forget the 2 in front. Okay, so I just rearranged how this looks so it's easier to subtract. All right, so now I'm just going to subtract like normal. Just because my decimal is all the way over here, it's okay. Don't get confused. I'm just going to start at the very end again. So I'm going to start with 4 minus 1. But before you do that, I would also place your decimal right here so you know where it is. Okay, so 4 minus 1 is 3. 7 minus 7 is 0. 7 minus 3 is 4, and 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay, so I made sure to place each of my numbers in the same spot that they were, and the decimals in the same spot. So if I put dots, some dotted lines to help us here. Okay, so these are in the same columns. Decimals are all lined up, okay, and all my numbers are all lined up. This was one of the example problems on page 179, so if you want to look at 179 example 3, this was the problem that we just did, okay? Let's do one of the got it problems. So in the got it problems, let's do F, okay? So one of the things that the chapter is going to tell you is that if you have a decimal, like if you had 5.7 or just 5, you might need to put a 0 behind it, okay? And we practiced this on the skills test, so hopefully you remember. Okay, so let's do F. So got it, problem, F. So got it, problem F, page 179. Okay, that's what we're doing it from. So got it, problem F is 14 minus 9.09. So you might be thinking there's no decimal here, but there is a decimal, okay? So if I rearrange this, I'm going to put my decimals right here and right here. All right, so I have the 14 in front of my decimal, and the 9 goes right here, below the 4, okay? Okay, so if I just subtract this, if I subtracted like this, I might get confused, and I might say, well, I just need to drop down the 9 and just drop down the 0 because there's nothing up here. But actually, we have to put zeros there because you can't just drop these down. So does that change how it looks? So if I put a 0 here and a 0 here, now can I still drop down this 9 or this 0? Okay, I might have to borrow. I'm actually going to have to borrow. So if I start borrowing, okay, so 0 minus 9, I need to borrow from this one. But there's nothing to borrow from. So then I need to keep going to my left, okay, to borrow. So I can borrow from this 4. So I'll make that a 3, and I'll give 1 over here. So giving 1 means that when it gets here, it's actually 10. But then this one needed to borrow from that. So this now becomes 9, and this becomes 10. Okay? So 10 minus 9, that's much easier to do. 10 minus 9 is 1. Okay, I'm making sure I'm putting it in the same spot. 9 minus 0 is 9. I'm going to make sure my decimal is in the same spot. And then 3 minus 9. I can't subtract 3 minus 9, so I'm going to have to borrow again. So this now becomes 0, and it gives 1 over, which means it gives 10. So since it gives 10, I'm going to do 10 plus 3, and that's 13. So now I have 13. 13 minus 9 is 4. Okay? So my answer is 4.1, or 4.91. Make sure you put these decimals. It's very important that you put those decimals. Okay? Here are the rest of the got it problem answers on page 179. So if you wanted to give those a try, go ahead and you can match our answers. Make sure you're doing it correctly. All right, so that's it for adding and subtracting decimals. Make sure you have all your notes copied down for this. And if you need any help, just raise your hand in class, okay? Have a nice day.